Hi, my name is Onyango Otieno or Rix. Today I'm talking about three books that I love the most so far that talk about men. And to start with, I'm going to start with Bell Hooks, The Will to Change Men, Masculinity, and Love, one of my favorite books. And at the blurb, Bell Hooks says, men cannot change if there are no blueprints for change. Men cannot love if they are not taught the art of loving. Love is vital to maleness, to the spiritual and emotional wholeness men seek. And basically, in this book, Bell really tries to take us through how patriarchy affects men and how it injures men and the kind of things men can start internalizing in their consciousness so as to rescue themselves from the vandalism that patriarchy has taken them through. So it's a book that I love very much. Number one recommend. Right. The other one is more academic. It's titled Men's Lives. It's been written by Michael Kimmel and Michael Messner. And in this text, they were researching the real nitty-gritties of how patriarchy really looks like. Men's relationships with other men, men's relationships with women, men's relationship with patriarchy, men's relationship with their bodies, men's relationship with politics, and how they navigate the world, and how the early teachings, the early education of who men ought to be goes on to affect them in their adult lives, and how this affects their health, right? So it's one of my favorite books because I think it's one of the first books that I ever came across that gave me a deeper insight into what it's been like being here and feeling that I am different. I do not associate with violence the way manhood has been taught to me. And I've always been wanting to look for elsewhere where I can find something that I can relate to that explains why I feel the way I feel, that explains why I have different ideas of who men ought to be or not or ought not to be, right? So Men's Lives, I don't know where you can get this, probably on Amazon or some online bookstore somewhere. And then the last one will be The New Male Sexuality, written by Bernie Zilbergeld. And here, because, well, I love sex, Barney really tries to explore male sexuality in a very humorous, simple, accessible way. Because, again, many of us, we learn about sex first through porn or stories from fellow boys, fellow men. But it's very difficult for us to really go deep down into understanding our own bodies. Where do we look? Where do we search? Where do we start? And many of us often imagine that we are very good in sex, we're very good in bed. But again, there's something called the orgasm gap. Where is it here? How do we approach pleasure? How do we approach knowing your body, and how to know, like what's gonna work for you, how to be there for your partner as well. What do you understand by pleasure anyway? And what does sex mean to you? So it's quite an interesting book, this one. And again, also a little bit academic, but it's quite accessible. Like, the language is not too complicated, right? So like, you can see here one of the topics, being sensual with your partner. He's talking about hugging and holding, scratching, touching your partner's things, just the ABCs, for example, of sensuality, which I think men really need so much education. So yeah, that's me.